I'm back with you. I've always been here. That's one of the lines that Frank Morris used in one of his Zodiac letters to the press. Today, what I want to bring you is, as I usually do, as I remember things, I usually make a video for you, and I wanted to bring you this video about what I've remembered recently over the last couple of days about a time when Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers attacked me in a field. And I'm going to make this a short, brief video. I'm going to leave out a lot of details. Maybe I can give you some more details on it later, but they were chasing me across this field. They had killed a friend of mine for giving me a ride home, and he gave me a ride home to keep them from catching me. And I went over to his house to talk to his wife about him, and she told me that it was my fault he was dead, and that just really shocked me. I was about 9 or 10 years old, and she told me to get out of there, and she closed the door on me. And when I went to leave, I turned around, and there was Frank Morris and John Anglin walking towards me in between the two houses. So I turned to run into the field, and to make a long story short, again, I hid in a patch of sawgrass. Now, sawgrass in Florida, you know, they say it'll cut you up really bad and everything, and it can. But I knew how to get in and out of it, and I got in there and I laid down. I was exhausted, I was overheated, I couldn't run anymore. And they just leisurely walked across the field to the sawgrass patch. Now, one of the Anglin brothers was carrying a bucket that had some things in it that looked like rolled up material, and a tool that I think was a knife. And when they got to the edge of the sawgrass patch, Frank goes, he looks in there and he goes, "Yeah, he's dead." You know, because I was laying down, breathing heavily, and I tried to get up, and he goes, "Oh, he's getting up." And I started getting dizzy, so I laid back down, and he goes, oh, his nice personality comes out, and he says, "Go ahead and lay down, just rest, you're tired." And so I laid there resting and thinking, I remember thinking, wow, you know, these guys chased me all the way over here, now this guy's being nice to me, what's going on? Frank Morris had a split personality, okay? But the long and the short of it, again, I think it was John Anglin had this bucket, and Frank turned to him and started taking off his pants and his shoes, and he says, "Give me those working breeches." You might remember the term breeches. Frank used that terminology on a victim when he did the Phantom murders in Texarkana back in 1947. He told him, "Take off your breeches." And I remember now that that's probably the first time that I heard anyone say that word besides my dad, because he used that word. And I had forgotten about this part of it, but you know, it's come back to me here in the last few days as I'm thinking about it. He says, "Give me those working breeches." And one of the Anglin brothers handed him this roll of material that he unrolled, and was a pair of pants. And they looked like they were coated with some kind of maroon colored paint or plastic or something. It was dried blood. And I asked a few people about it after the fact, what could that have been, and no one knew, including a highway patrolman who lived in our neighborhood who was trying to catch these guys, and said that he was sure that it was Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, and that they were killing people and kids. They were killing kids in that neighborhood, but that he was having trouble getting help from his supervisors on this, and he said that it was something political. Now, Frank puts on his working breeches. He goes, "Now give me those working boots." He liked really talking to the Anglin brothers like he was in control of them. He talked down to them, and they gave him the boots, and he put them on. And he takes off his shirt, and I remember laying there looking at him and thinking, what's he doing, And he said, now give me that knife. And he passed him the knife, and he took the knife, and he says, well, it's time for me to go to work. And he put the knife in his teeth, and he walked over to the sawgrass patch where I was hiding. And I remember being half delirious from the heat and everything, and I said, Tarzan, because he looked like, Tarzan would put that knife in his mouth before he would dive or whatever. And he took the knife out and he laughed and he goes, yeah, I'm Tarzan, and I'm coming to play with you. And he put the knife back in his teeth and he started to walk into the sawgrass. Well, when he touched the sawgrass, he looked like he got electrocuted, jumped back, and he was like, what? Heck, how did he get in there? And John said, we can go in there and get him if you want, Frank. We'll bring him out. And Frank freaked out because he was like, no, you're not supposed to say my name. He didn't say that, but I could tell by the look on his face that he was like, wanted John to shut up. And I've told friends of mine, I don't think I've made it public, but I've told friends of mine that there was one time that I can remember through all of these attacks and everything where John spoke Frank's name. And I couldn't remember where it was, and this is where it was at. I clearly remember, and I also remember because the next day when I told this story to the highway patrolman that lived in our neighborhood, I told him that the guy's name, that the one guy had called the other guy Frank, and he just like flipped out. He goes, that's it. He goes, that's it. And I go, what? And he goes, one of the guys from Alcatraz name is Frank. And I was like, well, how come why can't they just get you stationed here to help or whatever? And he says, there's all kinds of political things going on. I'm trying to work on it. But anyway, the long and the short of it, this is how Frank kept from getting caught all the time and kept from leaving evidence behind. He had a special set of clothes he used for butchering kids, and he would put them on, do the butchering, and then he would have one of the Anglin brothers take the bucket that they brought the clothes in and take it down to the body of water, which is why he killed people near bodies of water, and they'd bring back a bucket of water and he would use it to clean up. And then he would put back on the clothes that he had on before that were nice and clean because they were nowhere near the murder. Man, that was almost me, okay? He backed off. He went to get in there, and he backed off, and he just decided he was going to leave. And when John told him we could go in and get him, he said, nah, forget about it. We'll get him later. And then I remember the last thing he said was, he's dead anyway. And they left. And they tried to catch me on the way home, and that's another story. But now you know why the Zodiac killer did his murders near bodies of water. It was about cleaning up afterwards so that he wouldn't be detected. These guys could walk in to a murder. They looked like kids, and they were in their 30s and 40s, and carry a bucket with all of their tools and everything in it, and they just looked like some kids carrying a pail like they were going fishing. That's probably what they told people. They were going fishing. And they would often carry a stick, too. It was like a broom handle, and they probably used that as an excuse, but they actually used that broom handle to beat their victims just for their own pleasure. Some of them will probably beat to death, and some of them, when they beat them until they got tired, and then they would cut their throat. Anyway, I'm just imagining how Frank, being the methodical planner that he is, would plan out these type of murders. He would change clothes, do the murder, have his fun, get blood all over him, which he told me he liked to have blood all over the place. They'd get him a pail of water, he would clean up, he'd put his clothes back on, and they would put everything back in the pail and just go walking out of there and leave the person that they killed there, and they would probably come back at night and dig a little grave and bury him there. Frank told me he was an expert at making people disappear, and he said it didn't matter what size they were. Small ones, large ones, he didn't care. The life of a serial killer. I hope this helps you to understand a little bit more about the Zodiac killer. And to help someone out there be aware that if they run into someone like this, you'll have an idea of what you have to do to take care of yourself. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask them. I got away from these guys a lot of times, and it wasn't because I was anybody special. It's because they started on me when I was 5 years old, and I got a knife away from them by accident, and I cut Frank with it by accident, and I learned from that accident that, I could do that purposely and, in a time of need and use it as a method of escaping. Now, I have a couple more videos I'm going to make for you. One about a time they tried to catch me at a swimming hole. I've told you about the 6 Mile Creek. This is a different one. And in this one, I had a knife with me. I'll give you the details on that one in my next video. And there's another video that's really, really going to be horrible. They murdered a preacher's daughter, and they buried her in her own backyard, and her mother saw them burying her, and they told her that they were a road crew and that they were putting a pipe in the ground, and they had the body wrapped up in a carpet. Friend Junior, this was his girlfriend, and he called the police, and they couldn't get anything done. And he used to go over there when we would go out in the woods to play, and it was really sad, he would put flowers on her grave. And he tried to dig her up one time, and he got down to that carpet, and he couldn't get any further. I'll make some videos with more details on those attacks that happened back in Buffalo Estates in Tampa, Florida.